All right, it is 5:05 and we want to be mindful of everyone's time tonight. We are presenting information about the North Shore School District Chinese language program at Sunrise Elementary School. Just some housekeeping details this evening. This session is live streaming, and we also will be recording the session. I'm going to start the recording now. None of the participants will be on the recording. It's just those of us that are a part of the webinar panel that will be recorded along with the actual presentation. You can see that I have a live transcript on, and we have also opened a Q&A. So the Q&A is going to be open and available. You're welcome to post questions that you have about the program if they are not answered directly during our presentation. And we will do our best toward the end of the session to go through the questions that have been posted. We have disabled chat so that you are able instead to use the question and answer. Welcome to our second annual presentation about the Chinese language program at Sunrise Elementary School. I'm going to turn things over to Principal Steve Hopkins.
Thank you, Tracy. Welcome to everyone who has joined us this evening. I am really excited to share about the Chinese language program at Sunrise Elementary. And tonight we're going to share some details about the program and just share also some logistics if you are interested in having your child enroll in the program. And as Tracy alluded to, we'll do our best to answer any questions that you may have. So great to have you here this evening. And I'm going to jump into our presentation. So I'm pretty confident that Dr. Reed, our superintendent, will be joining us shortly. And when she logs on, we'll pause for a minute and say hello to her. But you've met Dr. Malloy, who is our district chief leadership and strategy officer. And I'm the proud principal at Sunrise Elementary. I am in my 7th year as the principal there. Last year, we started the program as a response to our strategic action plan. We felt that providing the opportunity for first graders to begin to learn a foreign language, and in this case, Mandarin Chinese, would really address goal 4 of our strategic plan. And we believe that having the opportunity to learn a second language really is relevant and just engages students in learning in a new and exciting way. And we feel that that not only equips them with a wonderful skill, but it also really enriches their lives. So we started the program last year. We have a current cohort of first graders that are halfway through the year, and we're really proud of the progress they have made. And we are just excited to continue the program next year and welcome hopefully a new cohort of first graders for the 21-22 school year. And this is a North Shore School District program. It is housed at my school, Sunrise Elementary, and we have just a little bit of classroom space, which just made this program a good fit for our school community. So I'm going to pause for just a minute. I see that Dr. Reed just logged on and wanted to welcome her and give her an opportunity to say hello to everyone.
Thank you, Principal Hopkins, and welcome. We're really excited about this program and having it enter into its 2nd year. We feel really confident that it's a great experience for our young Sunrise students and students across the district. So we're grateful that you took time to be here with us this evening and know that we're committed to continuing the Chinese language program and recognize the huge benefit for students, families, and our North Shore community. So thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I want to share a little bit about the program. This is a unique program for our district and really for the Puget Sound region. It is not an immersion program where students would come in and immediately have full immersion into Chinese, nor is it a dual language program where there's kind of a half and half model. But this is a program where we introduce the students to Chinese in first grade, and then we grow just the percentage of Mandarin throughout their elementary school experience. So what we have done this year is we have our teacher, Mrs. Jiang, teaching about 20% of the week in Mandarin. And when we talk about the class, it really is kind of like a typical first grade class, and you bring in Mandarin throughout the school day and throughout the school week. So it very much feels like a first grade class in terms of the reading, writing, math, social studies, PE, music, library. And the students have an opportunity to begin to speak, listen, read, and write in Mandarin. And then Mrs. Jiang does an extremely skillful job of weaving Mandarin into transitions and routines throughout the day as well. And so that that kind of ends the percentage at the end of the week with about 20% of the week spent learning Mandarin. And we'll show some examples here in a moment. Tracy is going to be making a FAQ page available. It's also going to be on our webpage, and you can get a sense of that progression of Mandarin from 2nd through 5th grade, as well as some other questions that you might have about the program. So just wanted to share just a few examples from the class. So just an example of a exit ticket where students have been working on some various characters. They have been working on days of the week. They've been working on their numbers. And they've been doing some character practice. So they've been submitting various activities and assignments to Seesaw, just like all of our students are doing around the district, practicing their characters. And then as they go through the first grade experience, we just want them to begin to be able to read, write, and converse about things about their family, things about school life, such things as colors. You see a weather wheel here. So just some everyday types of things, and just beginning to build that foundation in first grade and progressing it as we move on. I'm going to take just a few minutes to show you a few video clips of both the teacher providing some instruction and just some of our wonderful first graders, and just giving them an opportunity to show off their learning. So the first video, the students back in October were just learning how to pronounce in Mandarin eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. So just share just two quick examples here. We'll do one more. We have to bring pets into learning.
Hi, my name is Graham, and I'm gonna do this thing today on my dog. 眼睛、鼻子、嘴巴，眼睛、鼻子、嘴巴，嘴巴，嘴巴。 眼睛、鼻子、嘴巴、耳朵、耳朵。
You have to bring the dogs in when you're learning Mandarin.
眼睛、鼻子、嘴。
And here is Mrs. Jiang?
晴天，晴天 sunny。阴天，阴天 cloudy。刮风。
So teaching a little bit about weather. And then the students are just given lots of opportunities to practice independently and submit their work and share their work. This was a lesson that they just did recently around fruit. I'm just gonna again show you a quick clip and then some students.
Hello, first graders. Today we learned 水果，水果，水果 fruit, fruit. 苹果，苹果，苹果 apple.
So after Mrs. Jiang had introduced various fruit, the students had the opportunity to categorize fruits that they liked and fruits that they didn't care for so much. So one of our students, Allie, submitted her preferences on this seesaw entry. And so up here it just says, I love and I don't love. So here's her response.
我爱破炒烤妹是个黑妹
And they've spent some time
So
learning colors.
let us start it over. 红色 red, 红色 red, 绿色 green, 绿色 green.
红色 red 红色 red 绿色 green 绿色 green 黄色 yellow 黄色 yellow 蓝色 blue 蓝色 blue.
So hopefully that's given you just a sampling of some of the things that the students are learning in Mandarin. And our teacher, Mrs. Jiang, is extremely skillful at weaving the Mandarin into school life and the schedule, the routine. And then in addition to the direct instruction that's happening in Mandarin, she is weaving it into different content areas. This is just a brief example where we had 4 problems on a typical math homework and remembering that our families would be familiar with. And the student is encouraged to write their Chinese name. And then the student did 2 of the problems in English, and then did 2 of the problems writing the characters. So just an example of how there's direct instruction in Mandarin, but also lots of opportunities to weave in Mandarin to the different content areas, as well as transitions, schedules, and obviously it's been a very unique year doing this online, doing it remotely, but it's been a really successful year, and we believe that the students are gaining a really great foundation in Mandarin and looking forward to sending them forward to 2nd grade. I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, and she's going to share some logistics around eligibility and some timelines and other details.
Thank you, Principal Hopkins. Before I do that, we do have a few questions that have come up that I just think are natural to have answered right now. So the first question that I would love for you to share about has to do with what kinds of anecdotes do you have, if any right now, for how the program has enriched or benefited the families and the children that are in the Chinese language program?
Yeah, I think as we alluded to earlier, not only are the students gaining a wonderful new skill, but they're really enriching, it's enriching their lives. And so I would say that I see so many of the seesaw submissions, and I just see the parents getting involved. The parents are learning the language as well, and it's really provided some great opportunities for families to connect that way. And we know that during this pandemic, there's been a lot of challenges, and this has been one just kind of enriching activity for families to engage with. So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Dr. Reed, would you have any other thoughts around where we find or feel that there's benefit and enrichment to our North Shore community?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Malloy, and Principal Hopkins. I think it's always a good idea in this, in our really ever smaller global community, for young children to have an opportunity to learn a second language or refine a second language. And this is our opportunity to wade into that with the Chinese language, much as we have with Spanish at Wooden. And we'll be picking another world language at Ruby Bridges Elementary, as they are a primary year's international baccalaureate program school. So just wanting to make sure that our students in North Shore have the opportunity to explore a passion. And if the Chinese language program is something that appeals to families and excites young students, we want to be able to provide that support.
Thank you so much.
I would add as well that our teacher, Mrs. Zhang, has really brought in an appreciation of Chinese language and culture, and just giving the students an opportunity to learn about many of the Chinese holidays and traditions. We have Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, coming up on February 12th, and so they're gearing up for that. And not only are they learning about it, but they're going to be kind of sharing their learning with other first graders at Sunrise.
Great. Yes, I just appreciate those answers. Thank you so much to both of you. We have one more question that we'll answer live, and then I'll go into some of the eligibility and the kind of mechanics of how we enroll students in the program after that. But there has been an interest in knowing whether or not if a student has is enrolled in the program and they have a sibling who's going to be a kindergartner, or who's a kindergartner now, and who's therefore going to be a first grader this coming year, whether or not they're automatically eligible. And we have precedent in other programs that are choice programs in North Shore that does admit siblings. And so in this case, I believe Principal Hopkins, you've thought this through as well, and believe that as long as the sibling of the currently enrolled student does meet the eligibility characteristics for successful first graders, that we would certainly welcome them into the next cohort. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, indeed, that's correct.
All right, fantastic. So there are several other questions in the Q&A, and since I'm going to start answering the questions, I'm going to, in terms of, talking to all of you right now, I'm not going to be able to track the Q&A while I speak, but then I'll go back through. If I haven't answered the questions that many of you are beginning to wonder about, I will go back through the Q&A and make sure that we take care of any of them that aren't addressed in the next several minutes. So we are really excited to look toward enrolling another class of first graders in September 2021. And when we began this program, we knew, because of its unique nature, that there were going to need to be some characteristics that we wanted to ensure that the incoming first graders demonstrated so that they would be successful in the program. So you can see here on the slide that is shown that one of the things that we do expect of incoming first graders is that they demonstrate proficiency in English language arts while they're in kindergarten. So obviously this year has been a very unique year in terms of learning, but we have kindergarten teachers that have been doing everything they know how to support their students' learning. And that includes getting to know them as readers and writers. So our teachers of kindergarten are certainly going to be able to speak to the eligibility expectations that we have for the Chinese language program, which is that a student in kindergarten would be somebody who is proficient in the literacy skills that we expect of kindergartners. We are looking for students that are going to be able to not only learn Chinese when they're in first grade, but continue to build their English literacy skills as well. So when a family is interested in enrolling their first grade student in this program, Principal Hopkins will connect with the family's current school and with the current kindergarten teacher and ask about the progress that the student is making in kindergarten. The semester report card will be considered, the teacher's knowledge of the student will be considered, and we're looking specifically for the skills that a child has in terms of behaviors that promote learning. We want to make sure that they are able to, feel confident about themselves as learners, that they are able to get along with others. Obviously, we want that of all children. And we also want to make sure that the students have some strong foundational literacy skills in English. We will also be using the iReady diagnostic in January, or at this point in the school year. I believe it's probably happening either now or in February. And that is going to help us know about students' early literacy and developing literacy skills as well. So that is one of the things that's important for us to make note of, that because this is not a program where we are developing a student's Mandarin skills in the same way that a complete immersion program would be doing, or that a dual language program would be doing. We do need to kind of screen students for their literacy skills when they're in kindergarten to make sure that they are going to be successful as first graders. And we do know that the process worked well. This last year, Principal Hopkins was able to find out lots of great information from the students' current teachers of kindergarten, and the current students are all doing very well. So we believe that this process will work for serving the same purpose as we look towards September 2021. Is there anything that you would add to that, Principal Hopkins?
I think you covered it really well. We want to have that strong foundation because we recognize that there will not be quite as much time devoted to English language arts, because the first graders in this class will be devoting some of that English language arts time to learning Mandarin.
Thank you. All right, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So once again, this is a choice program, and it means that it is something that we are offering as a choice for families to explore. We've set it up so that students who are in first grade are the students who enter the program each year. And then that cohort of students moves from year to year. So this year's first graders are students that will move forward and be second graders. And then a new cohort of first grade will come in September 2021. When talking about choice programs in the school district, it's important to recognize that that means that transportation is the responsibility of the families. So for those of you who are listening in tonight, this is an important consideration, and we do have stories from families that were very excited about the program last year and were thinking very seriously about submitting their interest in enrolling their child in the program. And then they began to drive to see what the route was like from their home to the school. Sunrise is located in a neighborhood that's probably one of the most southeast neighborhoods in our school district. And there were some families that just knew that the commute would be a little bit challenging. Of course, that has come to not be such a problem right now. But we do want to make sure that everyone understands that if your child is enrolled in the Sunrise Chinese language program, that you would be responsible for transportation. Also, something to keep in mind is that the class size is typically larger or is larger than a typical first grade class. And that's because we need to make sure that we have students in our incoming first grade groups that through natural attrition will still be a sizable enough group that we can maintain the enrollment. So we capped the enrollment for each first grade class at 27 students. We had more students show an interest, or more parents show an interest to enroll their students last spring. And we did develop a waiting list. We had probably, I don't even remember. We had at least 55 applicants for 27 positions. We do keep a lottery process that is used in order to then identify the group that is offered first acceptance into the program. And I will outline that lottery process in a second. But it's important to know that we also have, as part of the lottery process, what happens if somebody doesn't enroll. So we have a deadline for that. So the lottery process essentially is such that we have a window of opportunity for families to complete an interest form, and that will essentially put their child's name into a group of possibly eligible first graders for September 2021. We're opening the window on Monday, February 1st. So that is this coming Monday. And we will keep the window open until Friday, March 5th. So at 8 a.m. on Monday, February 1st, the Google interest form that is linked to the website for the Chinese language program will be available for you to submit your child's name, and it will close at 5 p.m. on Friday, March 5th. Now, if we have just 27 students whose families have said, we really want to have our child participate in the Sunrise Chinese language program, then it's all good. There's 27 kids. If, however, we have more than 27 families indicate that they have an interest in the program, then we will have a lottery. And the lottery process will take place the week of, it's the very last week in March, with the date ending of April 2nd. And I believe that that is the week of March 28th. So the lottery will happen between Principal Hopkins and I. We will bring in an absolute neutral individual, nobody connected with the school at all. Last year, we used an administrative assistant for one of our regional assistant superintendents. And we had the names of each child whose family was interested in having them participate in the first grade class of 2020. Their names were on a slip of paper, and each slip of paper was folded in half. We put these slips of paper into a container, and we literally drew one name at a time. And we had a spreadsheet that had the names of everybody who had put in an interest for their child, and we went through the list and named names, collected all the names, etc. And then the families of the children whose names were drawn during the lottery were notified that on the Friday of that week. We're going to follow the same lottery process this year. It worked well last year, so we know that it will work again this year. We will record the lottery process in case anybody is interested in watching it. We won't do it live, but we will record it and make the recording available to anyone who wants to see the lottery. And then families will be notified by Friday, April 2nd, of the acceptance of their child in the program. If it turns out that their their names, your child's name was not chosen to be part of the first grade group of 2021, then your name is on a wait list. And the wait list is ordered in the order in which all of the submissions for interest were received. And we will continue to keep that wait list on file. And then if any families who are notified of having their child accepted into the program, they take the week that they get to let us know whether or not they are confirming their child's enrollment. If they write us and say, you know, we've changed our mind, then we go to the next person on the wait list and then offer entry into the program to that individual. Furthermore, we will keep the wait list active until September 30th. And that's important because sometimes things happen over the summer and circumstances change. People get new jobs, they move away, and we want to make sure that we are able to begin on the very first day of school in September 2021 with 27 children in our first grade class. So I think I have explained the timelines. I think I've explained the lottery process. Is there anything that I missed, Mr. Hopkins?
You did a fabulous job of sharing that process, and it was good to have a real formal process to go through. And when we had a situation come up, we knew exactly what to do. We had our spreadsheet ready on the wait list, and we could go and invite the next person. And we definitely utilized that wait list. We probably ended up going 8 or 9 deep with various transitions over the summer. I would also just go back to the previous slide about the choice school and the transportation. Before the shutdown, we were preparing to support families and connect families together to potentially arrange carpools. We have students from all around the North Shore School District, but we felt like we could support some families that were in a similar region to perhaps create some strategic carpools to help address what might be a transportation challenge for some families.
Thank you. So let's see, there are other details that we want to share with you tonight about the Chinese language program. Some of the questions that are in the Q&A will be addressed as I continue to speak about the information. So is there another slide? Oh, there we go. Never mind. This is now time for the Q&A, so it will take care of the questions that are in the Q&A. Just give me 1 second to answer one question in writing. All right, so we have several questions in the question and answer, and one of them has been asked multiple times, and it has to do with whether or not teacher Zhang is going to move up with the current group of students and teach 2nd grade, or if she is going to continue teaching 1st grade.
We do not know the final answer to that question yet. We are definitely thinking about that and the kind of the ramifications of having her continue in 1st grade to welcome in the new cohort or rolling up. We're really giving it a lot of thought and seeking, you know, Zhang Laoshi's input, but also just thinking about the students. So don't have an exact answer for that. What I will say is, assuming that we do have enough interest to welcome in a new cohort, we will be hiring a new teacher, and we really struck gold with hiring Zhang Laoshi. And I just credit our human resources department and the power of networking to invite some great candidates that we interviewed last spring. And we're committed to having a biliterate teacher. So we are very thorough in the interview process. We have a Mandarin portion to the interview, both a speaking portion and a written portion, just to make absolute certain that we have just an outstanding teacher. What I will say again, I don't know, it's to be determined where Jiang Laoshi will end up next year. What I will say is you can count on her collaborating very closely with the new hire that we welcome in. And we're already actively recruiting for another teacher. We have a job fair coming up. And I would just say to any of our attendees, if you have any connections, it's really important that an applicant has their Washington State teaching certification and an elementary teaching endorsement. That was a deal breaker for a few candidates last year, but would invite you to reach out to myself or Tracy if you know of candidates. But rest assured that wherever Jiang Laoshi ends up, there will be some really tight collaboration with our new hire.
Thank you very much. So there are a few questions in the chat. Again, or in the Q&A. I'm going to do my best to answer them. And then if there are questions that I need Mr. Hopkins to weigh in on, then certainly I'll ask him to do so. But there are just some nuts and bolts questions that I feel fairly confident about asking or answering. So one of the questions has to do with the percentage of Chinese language learning and how it might increase over the course of the year. And this connects to another question that has to do with the approach to learning and the teaching philosophy. So I have not been able to figure out, and I apologize for this, how to put a PDF of the Q&A into the chat for everyone. But I will say that you can go on to the school district website, the North Shore School District website, and you can search for the Chinese language program. And you can get to the Q&A document answers there. It will explain that one of the things that we made a decision about when we started the program last year was that we would gradually increase the amount of Mandarin that students would learn over the course of each of their successive years in the program. So this year, students have been spending time learning Mandarin for anywhere between 10 and 20% of their school day. And we are gradually increasing the percentage of the school day spent learning in Mandarin or learning Mandarin by about 10% each year. So that's something to take into consideration. The approach to teaching and learning is that, number one, we're using the North Shore School District typical curriculum for first grade and for second grade and beyond as the foundation. And what we know is that our fantastic Mrs. Jiang is basically interpreting the curriculum and building materials as she goes. We also have access to a variety of other online materials and things that she has sourced to support the Mandarin elements of the program. Is there anything else that you would want to add to that, Principal Hopkins?
Yeah, I think you've summarized it really well. It again, as I mentioned it early on, it is very much like a typical first grade class in terms of curriculum. Jiang Laoshi is working very closely with our other first grade teachers at Sunrise and planning and mapping out the curriculum in a very consistent way. And she just layers in the Mandarin into her class. But the teaching style is very much what I would describe as a combination of direct instruction, where she models and then gradually releases the responsibility to students. And as you saw earlier, lots of opportunities for independent practice and feedback and all of those teaching strategies that are transferable to any content area. You'll notice that there's a lot of engaging teaching. You probably got a sense of that from seeing those video clips where she brings in song and motions and just a variety of interactive ways to engage students in learning Mandarin. So it's a very engaging class. And as you just, again, probably got a sense, Jiang Laoshi is very creative and musical, and she invites all the senses in as she's teaching.
Thank you so much. I think that that was that's very helpful for all of the families that might be wondering that same thing. So one of the questions, again, I'm going through our questions now in the Q&A. I'm just going to go pretty much in order. So they may jump around a bit, everyone, but I want to respect your time and also know that there are questions that we just need to get to. So one of the questions is whether or not there are opportunities for parents to volunteer in the class, in parentheses, in a normal year. And I think that the answer to that is an enthusiastic yes, please. And absolutely, we want families to be involved. And in fact, when we were first planning the program and did our very first in-person information night all the way back last January or possibly early February, we had great plans for how there would be school-based events, and we were going to have families involved, etc. So I know that there are still plans for that once we are able to rejoin school in person. So I'm enthusiastically saying, yes, there are opportunities for volunteers. And I see that you're nodding enthusiastically as well, Principal Hopkins. Thank you. Another question is that around whether or not we have funding guaranteed for a set number of years. And what I can say to that is that we have a commitment to continuing this program to see for as long as there's interest, right? So we now know, because there started off to be 80 people who are participating in this live stream. We know that over 170 people registered for the webinar. Perhaps there are going to be others who watch the live recording when it goes online. We know that there's quite a bit of interest in a program like the Chinese language program at Sunrise Elementary School. And the school district is committed to supporting the program for as long as there is that interest. We have thought about the fact that we will need to move a cohort of students into the middle school eventually. And the one thing that we know is that that group of students will then be extremely prepared, if not already beyond the learning that's available in the International Baccalaureate Chinese Mandarin program that's at Inglemoor High School. So we see this as a naturally building program that can serve students all the way from first grade on through their high school career. So I hope that that answers the question that the attendee was interested in having the answer to. One of the questions that a parent has asked is whether or not we consider any additional criteria in terms of admissions to the program. So, and there are similar questions in the Q&A about this that I think I'll answer broadly, and then Principal Hopkins, if I miss anything, then please let me know. This program, as we've said before, is open to any eligible first grader, regardless of whether or not your first grader is the typically developing a first grade student, whether your student is served through an IEP or a 504, or whether your student is served through the highly capable program. You know your child best, and that is what matters. The other piece that does matter, as you saw when we were talking about eligibility, is that the students who are going to be successful in the program are going to be students who are competent and proficient in their English language reading and writing skills. That's really important because we're carving out a portion of the ELA time, the English language arts time during the school day to teach Mandarin. So much of the English learning will continue and build through other means, but it does mean that for a portion of their time in first grade and second grade and third grade, their ELA class time is dedicated to learning Mandarin. So a student who is proficient in English reading and writing, regardless of their mother tongue, is the student who is going to be able to handle the cognitive load of learning both Mandarin and English at the same time. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Mr. Hopkins?
Yeah, well said, Tracy. We certainly, in the current cohort of first graders, we do have a few of the students who come from families that are native Mandarin speakers, and they're making great contributions to the class. And we have students that came into the program that had never heard one utterance of Mandarin, and they're doing really well in the program as well. So I think just going back to that kind of baseline that you mentioned of really being a good fit based on the criteria of the kindergarten experience in English language arts, and just the ability to come in recognizing that the students in this class will be asked to navigate something a little different than a typical first grade class.
Thank you. So we have two questions that they're similar and not similar, but they're in the same genre, I guess. And one has to do with if students are currently enrolled in the North Shore Family Partnership Program, whether or not they would be eligible as applicants for first grade. The answer is yes to that. And then the next question is from a parent who has a child that's in a Mandarin immersion preschool, and whether or not this program would be a good fit. So we had some similar questions last year, and it also, this question about the whether or not a child who's currently in a Mandarin immersion preschool program and therefore would, once they're a first grade eligible, would be a good fit for the program, also has to do with a question that many families who are native speakers of Chinese and their children therefore have Chinese as their first language were wondering about last year. And Principal Hopkins, what would you say to a parent who has a child who's already speaking Mandarin in the home, and whether or not this program is a good fit for them?
I would say a couple things. First, I would really just make sure you're familiar with what the goals of the program are in first grade, and just what we're going to expect students to be able to do in terms of their Mandarin at the end of the first grade, and if that's something that you would really want for your child. I think that you might ask yourself, how do you feel about your child kind of taking on a leadership and a mentoring role in the class, with having that foundation in Mandarin, that perhaps your child could be somewhat of a peer model in some of the learning opportunities. But I really think it's really, you know, your family and your child best, and what is going to be the best fit for you. We're hoping that we're really clear, again, that this is not an immersion program. This is not a dual language program. We're hoping that we're really communicating, here's what it's going to be like in the class. And then you just have to ask the question of yourself and your child, is this something that you would be interested in? I would say, knowing Zhang Laoshi and the expectation of any teacher that we would hire, that they would do their absolute best to differentiate to meet the needs of their learners. I mean, that's the heart of teaching and learning. And so I expect that there would be opportunities for students that may come in with some of those proficiencies already to have some opportunities for enrichment and other challenges. But I would think a primary piece of that would be taking on that mentor role and kind of that leadership role. So, but ultimately, I'll get back to just saying, you know your child, and just know what this program looks like.
Thank you so much. So again, going down the list of the questions that have been submitted, one of the questions, I think we've answered it already. I just want to make sure that we have, but one of the criterion for the new teachers that we hire, the question was, do they have to be native Mandarin speakers? And that is our goal, is to have native Mandarin speakers, both not just a speaker, but also a biliterate teacher in Mandarin as our teacher. or as our teachers in the program, we know that there is quite a community of Mandarin speaking, Mandarin biliterate educators in the Puget Sound region. And in fact, when we opened up the application for our first grade position last year that we hired for, we had over 10 applicants, which was amazing for one position. And they were all very, very qualified people. So we believe that we'll have similar success as we look toward this year. But so yes, the answer to the question is that we do want the teacher to be a native speaker of Mandarin, to be biliterate in both reading and writing. There is a question about a second grader and how a parent could enroll a second grader in the program. And right now we are only accepting applications for first graders. So unfortunately, if a child is beyond the first grade incoming this coming school year, we're not able to take that application. And there's a question about whether or not we have a plan to make the program broader, such as opening to other grades. Right now, we're building the program slowly by beginning with just building from the first grade class that we currently have. They're going to move up to second grade, and we're going to open and welcome a new class for incoming first graders this next year. And let's see, there was another question that was similar to this, so I just want to make sure that I take care of it in my Q&A list. There was a wondering about whether or not the program will be able to offer the opportunities for students who move through the program and go on into high school, whether or not we can offer AP courses for these students in the other content areas. And that's not the intent of this program, and we haven't actually explored it. I will use Dr. Reed's often used phrase, which is, well, we can always imagine the possibilities. So, you know, if things get extremely popular, then we will have to rethink our current thinking. But for now, the answer is we haven't thought about that yet. At what grade does the Chinese program end? Well, we will continue to serve the students in the cohort as they move up in the grades for as long as there are children to serve in the cohort. That's our commitment. Once it gets to a point, though, if there are too few students to run a full class, then we would have to figure out other ways to continue to provide opportunities for the children to build their Mandarin skills. Principal Hopkins, perhaps you can answer the question here. For families that don't live close to Sunrise, is the school willing to help facilitate carpools or other ways to connect families so that they can transport their children?
Absolutely. We will do whatever we can to support your family. In fact, that was something that we were putting in place last spring when we were still hoping that we would be in person. And so we actually, before the end of last school year, we had a class meeting. We had just hired Mrs. Zhang, so it was an opportunity to introduce her, but also just to have a little bit of community building with the cohort of students, because we recognize that this is a cohort of students that they're going to be together for a while. And so we wanted to jumpstart just that relationship building. And we will definitely have knowledge of where families are coming from in the district, and we can assist in connecting families that it looks like would be kind of a logical carpool match.
Yeah. Well, and didn't you share with me at one point in time, Mr. Hopkins, that the parents of the kiddos in the program this year started a little Facebook group and or their own Schoology group or something? They already started well before the school year began to connect with one another. So I would imagine that would also be something naturally occurring with the new group of first grade families as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to partner with families in any way possible to, because we recognize that transportation is a big piece of this.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question that got asked last year that I know is also being asked again, and I'll ask you to answer it. The question is whether or not for students who are accepted into the first grade Chinese language program, if they qualify for the EAP program, our elementary accelerated program or HiCap program, can they do both?
So the answer to that is, so the EAP option begins in 2nd grade. And so the EAP class is, or the EAP program, that's an independent class. And so at that point, you would have to make a choice if you wanted to go into the EAP, your child to go into the EAP program. What I will say is that we have many families in the district who qualify in both reading and math, and they remain in their classroom and receive what we call highly capable services. So that would be a way that you could continue in the Chinese program and receive the highly capable services. So I think folks that are familiar, that looks a little bit different than an EAP class, which currently the model in our district is that the EAP classes accelerate in reading and math. And it would be more of a case of the family and the student working with the teacher, if they did not go into an EAP class, to talk about what the highly capable services would look like, and definitely to invite me into that conversation to see how we can help you make the most informed decision. So it may be that continuing on in the Chinese class and receiving those highly capable services would be a good fit, or perhaps not continuing the Chinese program and going into the EAP class. But I will say that I've been a principal of an EAP site for several years now, and feel like I can speak to that program as well, and I'd be happy to help families make the most informed decision possible.
Thank you so much. So question about twins. What happens if we hold the lottery and one twin is chosen? Is the other one automatically accepted into the program? I know we entertained this question last year and we came up with an answer, but I honestly don't remember what we said.
We will have to get back. I don't for sure recall either.
I don't either, but I think it was more of a probably yes, but we'll have to double check on that. So I don't want to say something that was in conflict with what we might have addressed last year. But thank you for that question, because it's an important one. So could you address, Mr. Hopkins, just very briefly, again, it's a twofold question. I'm trying to combine a couple of ones that have come up. What are the general outcomes for the first graders in terms of their Mandarin for the first grade, right? And then how do the teachers and how do you and how do we make sure that the students are also still on par with their English language skills as well?
Great question. So part one of that question, we, at the end of the first grade year, we are just wanting students to be able to kind of speak about their lives in Mandarin and read and write about their lives. So their family, brothers and sisters, learn about, you saw the weather example earlier, talk about the weather, learn colors, talk about their family. I mentioned that, food groups, just kind of typical everyday types of things that would be important in the life of a first grader. And so we want them to develop a solid foundation in Mandarin of just kind of everyday life for a 6 and 7 year old. So that's the Mandarin piece. In terms of the English piece, it's still very much a first grade classroom, and they are still very much receiving the district adopted curriculum in reading, writing, math, social studies, science. The students are participating in our district assessments and receiving a district report card. So families will be informed of the progress that your child is making along the English lines and what would happen in a typical first grade class.
Thank you. And one of the questions that has surfaced is, how how do the kids do? Is there going to be any, I guess, detriment or penalty for them spending time during their first grade year learning Mandarin, not having perhaps the whole English language arts time dedicated to English reading and writing? And then how the kids do just in relation to their peers in the general program where students aren't learning Chinese.
I don't feel like we've seen any detriment. I think it's the Mandarin is just an enrichment opportunity for the students in the Chinese class. I will say that our current Chinese language teacher, John Lauscher, is working in very tight concert with the other first grade teachers. And so they are sharing assignments and seesaw introductions. And I would say they are a very tight-knit cohort. So the experiences that first graders in the general classes are receiving are also received in the Chinese class. And I would just describe it as a real common experience, with the Chinese class students getting the Mandarin layered into their class as well. But very much, it's a very tight operating first grade team at Sunrise Elementary.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you so much. So there is a wondering whether or not we would consider recording all of the Mandarin lessons to make all of these available on the internet, so that families who aren't a part of the program would be able to, who aren't able to enroll or aren't a part of it, can take advantage of the lessons. And that's certainly something for us to consider right now. We haven't been doing that. There's a wondering around whether or not there are any additional or extra assignments for children who might have a Chinese background and speak Chinese at home, if they needed to have some extensions. Is that something that is possible, or?
I would, I spoke to this earlier a little bit. I would just say work with the teacher. Again, I would say go into the class just fully aware of what is going to be covered and expected in the class. And if your child's beyond that, I would say, reach out to me, reach out to the teacher and explore options. I would say that for any content area. And I would just ask as a fellow parent to be realistic in what a teacher is able to provide. But I have seen John Lauscher be so responsive to our families and the different needs of the students in the class. 27 unique personalities in that class with different needs, and she's been super responsive to their learning needs.
Thank you so much. So, question about if a student is accepted into the program, but they have siblings that are of different ages and wouldn't necessarily be in the program, does Sunrise have the ability to welcome those children as well?
Yeah, so those families can submit a waiver, and dependent upon space availability at the grade level, we are very hopeful that we could accept a waiver, a sibling waiver. More often than not, my experience has been that we've been able to make it work. I will say there has been a few instances where, let's say you have a fourth grade sibling and our class sizes at fourth grade are pushing pretty high numbers. We might have to say no in that instance, but more often than not, we've been able to support families with a waiver request for a sibling.
Thank you. So again, we are very excited to have this program begin to accept new applicants for a new group of first grade students in 2021. We are looking forward, Principal Hopkins and I, to interviewing new candidates for a teacher that will be added into the program. Again, we don't know whether or not whether or not Teacher Zhang is going to be able to, if she's going to remain teaching in first grade or if she's going to move up with the second grade, but we know that she'll continue to work in the program. And we do look for candidates for teachers that are native speakers of Mandarin. There's a question in the Q&A as to whether or not we would be interested or willing to hire a teacher who speaks Cantonese, but that is also fluent in Mandarin. We did have some candidates last year that were in that particular situation. And if that person is qualified and that person is someone who has the qualifications we're looking for and does well in the application process, then that is a possibility. And then finally, I want to make sure that everybody does know that the program is open to any eligible first grader. It's important that those first graders do have, as kindergartners now, that they have proficient English language skills. But even if your child has an IEP and has some certain needs written into that IEP, we can make those accommodations. The teacher will work with the teacher of special education at Sunrise to make sure that the accommodations that are necessary are provided to the student. And again, as parents, you know your children best. So you wanna, if you want to have a conversation with Principal Hopkins about whether or not your child's specific needs would be a match for the program, you know, you can always get in touch. And then the last question that we have for the evening is there always one teacher to teach both Chinese and English, even for an upper grade like 4th or 5th grade? And at this time, the answer is yes, that's how this will work, because this is a program that's not like some of the dual language programs or the immersion programs that you may be familiar with in other school districts. We do know that in other school districts, there are immersion programs that have only the teacher that speaks Chinese teach the subjects that are taught in Chinese. They don't do any of the code switching, any of the language switching, but that's not how this program has been designed or developed. So we always plan at this time to have the same teacher teach the full day for their children that are in their classes. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined us this evening for this presentation. This has been a recorded event, and we will post the recording live if you need to go back and watch anything again. The answers to most of the frequently asked questions, not just from tonight, but from previous information sessions, have been incorporated into a frequently asked question document, and those responses are listed on the school district website for the Chinese language program. We look forward to turning on our interest form at 8 a.m. on Monday, February 1st, to begin taking the interest applications from any of you who are participating this evening, or anybody who watches this presentation at a later date and who has an interest in having their child participate in the Chinese program at Sunrise Elementary School. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to offer, Principal Hopkins?
I would just say there's been a lot of challenges in the last year, and it's been just a joy to launch this program. I am so excited to be able to continue it, and I'm just hopeful that we can start doing it in person in the fall.
Absolutely, I am as well. So thank you everybody for participating in the information session regarding the North Shore School District Chinese language program at Sunrise Elementary School. We look forward to finding out just how many people are excited to have their child considered for this program to enter into the next first grade class that will begin in September 2021. Have a great evening.